I want to thank the Friends of the Meeting House for allowing us to use their lovely space here. I want to thank Ben Paul at the Harvard Bookstore for printing out such luscious-looking books. I want to thank the Arrowsmith crew, Nick Snow, who designed these handsome books, Lena Marecki, who has been managing our website and social media platforms so expertly and teaching me a thing or two along the way. So I'm a slow learner, as I keep saying. To Chelsea Grasso, who is behind the camera and has brought a new dimension to our project. Thank you, Chelsea. To Francine Lachance of the Grow Your Bookstore for all the help and support that she has provided us for the many different ways in which she has enlarged the scope of this event. Thank you, Francine. I want to thank the 4 poets for giving us a reason to be here in the first place. We hope to stick around after the reading, buy a few books, get them signed. We're a small press that focuses on unusual books of high literary quality. We've had the pleasure of publishing poets like Daniel Berrigan, Donald Hall, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the first books of National Book Award winners Maureen McLean, George Schlava. In the future, we'll be bringing new books by Fanny Howe, Judith Baumel, Catherine Spiva, others to be named, identified soon. Before bringing on Lena Marecki and our first reader, I wanted to thank and acknowledge our co-sponsor, who has really become the soul of the Cambridge poetry community by keeping alive the legendary Grow Your Bookshop. So if you could please give a warm hand to Oriogun Menkees.
I mostly wanted to give a shout out to Rasco and the Arrowsmith group. It's amazing what we've been able to do over the years. And the dashing young man from many years ago and the agony, he's done a lot. So I just wanted for us to take this time to acknowledge what Rasco has done. The Arrowsmith group. And of course, we go there, we're very, very happy, really, really privileged to be part of this event.
There's one other person that I neglected to mention, and yet is central to this whole operation, and that is our new managing editor, Ezra Fox. And Ezra, if you could stand up and take a bow, because without him, it's not happening. It's my pleasure to invite Lena Marecki to come up and introduce our first reader.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming. Our first reader is Romeo Oriogun, and Romeo is a Nigerian poet whose poems have appeared in Brittle Paper, Connotation Press, Prairie Schooner, Distant Blog, and Expound, among other publications. His poems have been translated into Estonian, Slovenian, and Swedish, and rendered into songs in Portuguese. He is the author of the chapbooks Burnt Men and The Origin of Butterflies. He is the winner of the 2017 Brunel International African Prize for Poetry. His manuscript, My Body is No Miracle, was shortlisted for the 2017 Silverman First Book Prize for African Poets, and his poem, Metamorphosis, was shortlisted for the inaugural Riddle Prize for Poetry. He is currently a resident scholar at Dunster House, an Institute of International Education Artist Protection Fund Fellow, a W.E.B. Du Bois Research Institute Fellow, and the Harvard Scholars at Risk Fellow for spring 2019. So I've had the pleasure of getting to know Romeo over the last year, and even in so short a span, I can speak to his warmth, his vulnerability, and his fearlessness as a human and a writer. What I'm struck by most, though, is Romeo's clear-eyed conviction. Too many times throughout his book, Museum of Silence, they have to stop, sit, and reread a line before finishing the poem. Honest, sheer, aching beauty. I'm going to quote one of his poems. Our body's a mass of happiness, and she turned to ask, isn't this body glorious enough to stop you from living in a rainbow? I looked at her, 2 eyes, 2 lamps carved out of the dark, and I wanted the darkness also. Throughout this book, you take us on a journey of dying to be seen, understood, and valued, through blackness, through queerness, through death, and persecution. Romeo, it's a pleasure to be in your presence, and we all share in that sentiment. Please welcome Romeo.
Good evening, everyone. It's really an honor to stand before you this evening just to read poems. As a young boy growing up in Nigeria, I never thought poetry would take me across the world to read in spaces such as this. I'm also grateful to ASGO and the Arrowsmith press team for putting this together. It's a really beautiful presentation for the first time. I think for me what poetry means is love, it's tenderness, it's the fact that even when we seek to be understood in a world where we still don't feel we belong, that love is the only thing that keeps us home, and the only thing that keeps us grounded. And it's what I seek through my poems, and I'll be sharing a few of them with you this afternoon from this book. I'll read the very first poem of the book, which is called Museum of Silence. Museum of Silence. I don't know when we began to gather memories, but I remember the first. I was 14 when I told a man I wanted him and was called evil. Tell me, what is a body if not an animal crying to be free? And I walked with those chains. A man who loves a man is lost. And I heard it again. Stone a man caught with another man. And I wondered why my body was full of those tests. In the back, I scrubbed my body. 1 year I prayed, I cried. I cut my body to make it stop, but it began a wildfire and it burned. And I heard my name, meaning this praising of my body was mine, meaning I had my survivor, and all I did was screamed. And no one gave me freedom, as I learned language from the winds, and I called love whatever it is, a boy who called music another boy. And I knew this danger in the middle of my waking. I didn't know how to walk the streets, how to enter into a house that was mine. I knew no other boy that called his body a flower. And I kept quiet and became a museum. In dusty rooms filled with artifacts of desire, I knew magic as silence, as moving in shadows. And I called this a way of living, a bed hiding its color. And I prayed for rain because water gives strength. And I cried for a miracle to break out of a body. Everyone who touched my skin put my eyes at risk. And I cried for life until I saw a magazine with pages filled with 2 boys in bed with feathers for hands. And I knew they were free, and I wanted it. So I kept quiet and waited for rain. The second poem I'll be reading is Dating My Mother Through Death. I'm always trying to have conversations with my mom even if she's not here. And so this is one of the conversations that I imagine having had. Dating my mother to death. 19 years after my father's death, I will search for my mother's picture. In the portmanteau where she kept the memories that must not see the light. In the back, I will let my fingers hold pieces of the dogoyaro tree that stands over my buried placenta. I will touch the rough surface of the bunk pipe he hid before dying and see a man falling slowly into a grave. I will pass the last blanket he had, the letters my half-brother breathed into before filling with postage stamps to escape the embers of the sea as it sailed aboard a ship to the wharf at Lagos. Out past the marriage certificates, the cobwebs settling over the signatures of my parents, the court papers that sparkle with magic ink only our eyes could see. Then I'll pull a picture out of the back. In her picture is a room. I'll walk into it and kneel beside a chair as the photographer raises his head over his Polaroid to nod at her, as if a nod is the magic to trap a face in time. I would watch the wind from the window lift her skirt and see the storm underneath, the scars she hid with prayers in the bedroom, the blows, her face turning away as a hand becomes a fist, the bus station, the goodbye that was not said, and when the light blinds our eyes, I'll call a name that was not given to me and whisper, "Mother, I love a man the same way I've loved a girl." I'm afraid I might see her flinch. I won't know if it's from the light or from words that cut deeper into every wound her body has ever known. The next poem I'm going to read is called "Didn't See the Light." We had planned for a quiet wedding somewhere in the forest beneath the tree where my mother was buried, because what didn't die happy must be given another chance. One time we were in bed, a bottle of rum on the bedside table, 2 half-empty glasses beside it, our naked bodies a mask of happiness. And she turned to ask, "Isn't this body glorious enough to stop you from living in a rainbow?" I looked at her, 2 eyes, 2 lambs carved out of the back, and I wanted the darkness also. I couldn't explain to her why a boy's mouth, just like hers, can be a fisherman paddling my boat to shore. It is over now. Her, tired of holding the skin against every boy my shadow touches. I, tired of my body in the light, begging to be seen, a shell lost beneath sand. Yesterday, I visited my mother's grave. The tree has been cut down, and I saw a doe staring at me from afar. In my room, it took several seats in the closet, like a man staring at an empty street from a window. The next one is called Cathedral of a Broken Body. Because the church is also a body, I held his torso and inhaled it. Isn't smelling a dark part of skin a deeper form of prayer? In a room full of burning candles, I opened my hands to accommodate all the saints. By that I mean all the men there owned a part of me, and I couldn't say no to every wall knocking on my teeth. By that I mean I followed a man home from the brothel and got lost between the lines of his palms. Don't get me wrong, I didn't love him. I wanted to know how a man begs for love till his body mirrors my past. I sat on his chair and watched him. His cement-stained sheet, a map of lonely nights. I felt like God smoking marijuana between oceans. High on clouds, I didn't see the gun or his hand moving towards my skull. All I knew was him calling my name as if he was drowning, as if every bullet was an angel pulling him back from water. And I laughed, because my skin is another name for death and begging and what a drowning man shouldn't dream of. The room was a tomb filled with 2 men swaddled in cotton, waiting for the stone to roll off into a field of corn. And he collapsed into my hands, our baby testing light on his tongue for the first time. And all I did was caress his hair, close my eyes, and eat all the bullets. We have a few minutes. This one's called Before Your Mama Knew Others Light. Before your mama knew Others Light, she took us to the house filled with letters facing east. At first, we learned from the Moazin's call to secret of sounds, how it bends men into obedience. And I thought, this is it. The way to stay alive is to be silent, is to imprison joy inside our bones, a ritual twisted by us into a chameleon, born out of a ritual meant to change the day into night. You sat at the edge of the earth to know if I meant to deny the flesh. We are dead in every world, except this one wrapped in blue. The man in a white gown washed the Arabic letters for salvation into a bowl, instructed us to wash ourselves clean of desire, and learn between words the gate through which God took a bone and built a woman's body. Before we learned to fight, we knew how to survive. And I watched you hit the sky, made it a miracle that will touch a woman's body. And maybe this is the way to rob God, or a means of walking back into your eyes to be saved from what threatened to convert us into stones. I watched you pass through my ribs, a man nesting in the blood of another man. And this is wisdom made out of teeth and bones and prayers drowned in water. And when we came out to say our final prayer, the man took us into his arms, passed our names through prayer beads to harden us into men empty of the hunger to love in our language. When he was done, I softened my name in milk and prayed under the door. May I find love in whatever body that gives me home. Amen. And the next poem I'll read is called How We Became Dead Men. I've stopped seeing the sea or the silence of a boy inside another boy, or the soft cry of a mother whose song can sing a son back to life. Lately, I've been seeing death in my reflection in the mirror, and I want to leave a part of me on the body of a boy I was scared to love. How does a sculptor whittle wood until it becomes part earth, part him, a marriage of sweat and blood and shreds of wood, something mysterious only an eye full of tears could see, something to hide in a room full of books, where father lies on a couch like a lion waiting for the smell of fear. There is a type of hunger that breaks the night into sweaty palms, into a body waiting to die at dawn. And I have been dying since my mouth couldn't say love and live, couldn't say my lover without hands soaked in kerosene grabbing my body, a man waiting to be whipped and burned into what he was not born to be. The pastor said, I don't understand how a man finds love in another man. My mouth couldn't say tender, couldn't show him how I've dreamt of a touch that makes a flower blossom into colors closer to a miracle. How does a man bring a son back to life only to break him into an empty sky? Say it. When they locked me in a room full of prayers, the door slowly becoming the gateway to a prison, my mother leaving no statue made of salt behind, I became a city that reminds my father of a war fought before I was born, a memory to be forgotten, something to be locked up and hidden, like his uniform filled with the smell of blood and peace and the voice of a young boy begging not to be killed. Genesis, which is a play on the Bible. Within the first light of my birth, I was named after a war. My mother placed a pinch of sugar on my tongue to sweeten every darkness I would walk through. Then she rubbed hibiscus flower on my palms, which means sun, be tender even after the collapse of my walls. I have left the road. It is true the forest welcomed me, just the way distant places cover the skies of another city. And in the space between trees is a home, where the world is built out of our survival and the remains of our grief. I have wished death on my shadow from behind the cover of bushes, and saw it die, and still the earth keeps building. Did they know when they named me after what is named through blood, did they know when they named me that what is named through blood can never be free? Tonight, what sings is a bird drawing from the night sky a little portion of joy, a means to make a wish, and I have walked into the sun to reach my bed home. On the red couch, my mother bleeds and hides her blood in the color of the upholstery. Within her bosom, she evokes a prayer. It is true, I was hidden in that prayer, named also after a wish for freedom. Our hymn begins with a gramophone as my father picks her up and begins a dance, the air filled with the sweet smell of incense and mangoes. I stood by the side of a broken table and watched them grow on and on, a truth fashioned out of a hope hidden in God and dance. I saw the hibiscus flower in the purple vase, and I began the ritual of rubbing a pan with its liquid to be released. Take this water, take this blood, I cried as my mother passed me by. When I turned back to walk into the blessed sun, an arrow pierced the night and found me on my knees.
I'll read one poem, and I'll read a very short poem that completes the story. So, this is called Sacrifice. I was thinking of how light breaks to darkness when he showed me a picture of my mother in the arms of a strange man. Every memory contains a void, and I seek for the beginning of things. I sat in the middle of what is not complete and heard a body hit the ground as his hands stripped her back of the beauty of wings. I have folded back the sorrow into a house filled with forgotten furniture, where the sun touches the dust on the chair to remember who sat where during our dinner, who said the first light of dawn is not enough to make our city forget, who came in the dark and taught my father an offspring is a lamb heavy with sin, who gave him the knife. What I cannot replace is the silence in a man, what I can give him my eyes to see the wreckage he left behind. See, a prison is a body begging for her scars to be touched tenderly. Father, behind the bottle of gin, the weep still lies. Even in the dark, what shows us the way is another body. I do not judge her tongue drowning in the sweet water of another man. I do not judge the man walking away from a memory, splitting his son into an animal wriggling on the floor. I only held the fire. What I know alone. The city that bets you can also kill you. And this poem is called How the Tortoise Broke His Back. It's after a folklore. In every dream, I choose to be a blue feather on the wing of a small bird. And who wouldn't want the kiss of clouds, or God stretching his body to receive your prayers as he caresses his face? Don't say gifts. A man gives his son to heaven and rain falls as sadness into small pans. At the seminary, a book is a symbol of desire, just like a man's sculpted torso, just like a voice trapped between throwing a discourse and waiting. The birds gather to appoint the tortoise king of every test. How did he get here? At night, the sky becomes a hiding place, and no one told him about what happens to ghosts caught thirsty in the morning between the desert and the sun. I was given as a gift to an animal falling with a feather in his mouth. The land looked away as we fell. My uncle said, by the sea, The men from our village choose depths on white sands over the darkness of a ship's belly. I choose to live. I am falling between rows of teeth. And when the tortoise breaks his back, what will I be? Every prayer is a form of begging. May what dies always live. Amen.
So, Mr. Mitch Manning, wow, we got full house. Mr. Mitch Manning teaches English and labor studies at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and is its assistant director at the Joyner Institute for the Study of War and Social Consequences. He's a poetry editor for Consequence magazine, which you should pick up, and the founding editor of No Infinite, a poetry collection of No Infinite, there we go. A journal of poetry, art, and protest. His poems and interviews have been published in The Doors, Boog City, Let the Bucket Down, Consequence again, pick up your copy, Sundial, Hollow, GAF, and elsewhere. But if you were to ask me, when it comes to Mitch Manning, and more importantly, his City of Water, to steal a phrase of his own making, don't call him crazy, he knows. Whether unveiling a surrealist bumper-to-bumper Bostonian commute or reckoning with questions such as escaping our own childhood, The City of Water is a collection of poems in control of the unbounded, already out in space and without its own leaders. Waking you up like some cowboy coffee, Mitch's poems peek around the corners you didn't know were there and twist you into sights of knowledge new and forgotten. So working with him has been a distinct privilege. And introducing him now, lucky me, Mr. Mitch Manning, everybody.
I'm overwhelmed. I think any poet who comes to Boston dreams of having their book on sale at the Grolier bookstore, so it's a real honor to be here. I'm thinking, for the past few days, I've been thinking about lineage and thinking about kind of legacies that are right here in this room through the Friends Meeting House and kind of the value of what Arrowsmith does. And I was thinking that the health of a country is really the vitality and vibrancy of its independent press. And I think right now we're in this strange kind of corporate moment where so many small papers have gone away and small presses struggle to go on. So the ones that do remain and the ones that do contribute and that go through periods of quiet and then coming back with force, that's part of the cycle of writing. I think it's really, really important. I'm really glad to be here with Romeo and Martin and Thomas and thinking too about legacies of the Darkroom Collective and how important that's been for here in Cambridge and that there's so many great poetic energies that intersect here. So I'm grateful for friends and family who are here and it's a real honor to be here today. And I think we should also take a moment to thank Oswald for all of his work for stewarding. I think Oswald really embodies the citizen scholar and what it means to be someone who is engaged sort of in the work and in the writing and also to international scholarship. So I think that's really important. This book came about on the bus from Chelsea to Haymarket. If anybody's ever ridden the 111 bus over the Tobin Bridge in the morning, it's kind of dreadful. And it's about that kind of imprisonment on a bus with other people, but also kind of the political realities of our age. And I started writing it on 1/20/19, the Carnage in America Day, when the Don gave his speech, and I was thinking about kind of all the fractures and pulling apart and kind of dealing with my own issues of identity and heartbreak and loss and all these things. So I start with the I Ching at the beginning of the book, and I found the I Ching just randomly. And what I liked about it is, as I'm riding the bus every day, I'm watching the tide go up and the tide go down, and the sun go up and the sun go down, and the people awake and the people tired, and the moon is full, the moon is not full, there is sun, there is not sun, and watching these sort of cycles and change. So the I Ching is called the Book of Changes. And so the one thing it's aware of is these little lines, and they're always changing. And so it starts with hexagram 24, which is the return. Things cannot be destroyed once and for all. Return means coming back. Voice in the mirror. Radio music, talking before the track tapes. Gray mist out the dripping window. Who claims the inside? I wait for cats on the porch, or a crack in the weather. Absence of moon, another conscience. A storm sits somewhere in force. A building closes in on itself. Certainty of concrete falling down in waves. All the office workers file out, fill up Reforma Boulevard, swaying spires, Lake Tenoctolon, soft and sponge-like, crooked teeth of fault lines. Change is the forever pain of this. Dreams of windows, open that won't close, cold air, the house that seems familiar but isn't, the same dream that you're having. Besides, the laws of the peacock are stark. Each eye a letter, an alphabet. Each book a world. Each book into the next. A cycle, sequence, chronology. Memorize Le Fleur du Mal before rejecting it entirely. A passage is a pilgrim, a paragraph, a function. Each fortress of words opens the doors a micrometer more. For each book destroyed, someone will write it in another time or place. This is the symptom of eternity, endlessness, conduits of desire. I create a library out of everything I reject, an architecture of dismissal. I turn the watch with boxing gloves, repeat the same cycles of longing. Mail is delivered today and tomorrow, but the man on the corner reminds everyone his prowess for beatdowns at daybreak, returns each morning to the same dirty corner. Don't call him crazy, he knows. Thank you. I'm glad, I really appreciate Nick's introduction. I thought it was really, it was a very generous reading of the book and some of the influences that I've been playing with. Monday night I went to see a talk over at the Zuzu, and it was the Middle East, and it was a press from England that came here, and they were doing some really interesting kind of occult and experimental stuff. And there was a woman who gave a talk on a surrealist painter. What was her name, Gabe?
Ithel Calhoun.
Ithel, right?
Ithel
Calhoun. And so we think of surrealists as Dali and Max Ernst and all this sort of, Bretons, but there was a huge female surrealist movement, and there's a great book edited by Penelope Rosemont called The Female Surrealist. So this poem's inspired by Leonora Carrington, who was a British painter and surrealist who went to Mexico.
Woo!
Gabe is the only walking surrealist today. So shout out to Gabe. And it's from a movie called The Flowering of the Crone, which is about her, so you should definitely watch it. Leonora's bedroom. The ancestors' shrouded figures reclaim their lost powers. A goddess emerges from a magic circle, 4 lemurs and a lepidopterus, black swans under the dining table, queen of them all, eating the pomegranates. Inscribe a setting sun to bring back the world, the many dimensions of people. Painting is a vehicle of transit. The convent education became a haunted house, a repository of shame, an apparition, wraith-like, fleeing the Edwardian house. Does anyone escape their childhood? Waking up. I boil cowboy coffee in a saucepan, live like a barbarian, leave the door open to piss, dishes to rot in the sink, wonder about my dying plants, watch the sun fight the clouds over my old neighborhood. The tide is up for now, a wave cresting against ribcage, patterns of craving, movement of bruised eye. I hide in the vents at the library, read self-help on the floor, my finger tracing Jung's shadow, secrets of the incongruent. This enervation, what holds me that I hide, what governs me that I can't see, moving more imperceptible than breath, not even rise or fall, but command, insistence, strange feeling. The tears of things move like a shadow above harbor, water pattern of light. The healing circles are growing. I chant your name to see if you will appear again. Scorpio curls darkness around him, black orchids, a lilac in hand. So much planning done for the unplannable. Nothing but a dark spot where your voice once was. Temples of grandeur, glass-like waters of winter, moving currents of song, barge bottom, tug top, the airport ejaculates another rocket. We're undone by the weather, stripped bare by pleading. You knew every inch of this city, left with only the clothes on your back. I carve a prayer in rock, an epitaph, wishes like wings disappear beyond buildings. I want to thank Romeo too for his reading. I thought it was a really just tender and clear-sighted vision of these kind of letters to lovers and mothers and lost, and just really, really beautiful. This poem is after Fanny Howe, but also for Fanny and her great book, the new book that came out, The Needle's Eye, Passing Through Youth. And if you haven't read it, I really encourage it. Part of a trilogy that really kind of situates in Cambridge of nonfiction, and it looks at, I remember we had a reading group with Oscar and Fanny and others, and we were reading Agamben, the Italian philosopher, and he has this concept, homo sacer, which is where the poem comes from, bare life. And I remember I was asking Fanny, I was like, oh Fanny, what are you writing right now? And she says, I'm writing a book on mercy. And I thought it was a book of poems, and then it ended up being this beautiful book about St. Francis and the marathon bomber, Johar Tsarnaev. And it was this really beautiful, and it was around, right after the trial of him and that whole movement. Johar Tsarnaev was educated at Cambridge in Latin and lived on Norfolk Street, where I used to live, so it was these kind of confluences. So this poem is called Bare Life. It's for Fanny. I opened myself to surveillance like Francis, standing at the woodline without clothes, the villagers embarrassed for the marks and scars they gave him. At the edge of the meadow, a procession, robed in wreathed barefoot mendicants, hair of laurels, a single tambourine. Voices carry above branchless trees, a fecund hope grown in northeast gardens, uninterrupted birdsong, a prayer wall for lost causes. Someone scrawled a name so small we thought it an accident. Did prayer stop the wall, the killing, the heart from falling through the floor? I tie myself to a lamppost at the bus stop so I don't stink through the street into the river. My heart beats unsure of its own path forward, a wire errantly crossed. To save or be saved on the 751. Tomorrow, the sun will disappear, and the light through the window will be flat and empty, depthless. I stand in silence, unsure where living and lying begins or ends. Which persona will I wear today? Whose clothes will I put on? This energy of bells ringing across the eaves and gutters asks, who is our warlord of night? When will we go to battle? Courtrooms are instruments of imbalance. Who has a trust in a system that defies them? Survival isn't happiness. Bare life is enough, say adjudicators of the state. All is fair beneath wig and robe, unless you're naked and your head is shorn. Ouroboros. When Jung was dying, he asked his son to take him to the window, to see the mountains one more time. Philemon, sorceress of Psyche, reaches into unconscious longing. Sorrow's cup of tear-stained winter. The end of an epoch after the end of an era. Park yourself in front of the TV. Take a waltz around Walton Pond. Round we go out of the subway to see the same street in a different light, a different anguish on hooded faces. Ash and dust engulf the monument. the caretaker of the mangled Capitol, sleeps in a tattered flag under Henry Harrison's faded portrait. Hunted and preserved, destroyed and refound, who is our arbiter of fate? The gray sun signs Aquarius today as the water bearer pours out a legacy of grief down the steps of the Capitol to the sound of no angel's trumpet. I wrote that on 1/20/19 after the end of an epoch, after the end of an era. Thank you guys for coming, I really appreciate it. And it's like very cool to see people come to a poetry reading at all. There's so many things that we could do in our world, so in our distracted world, to come and hear people read poetry is interesting. So I'll just end with this short elegy for a young poet from Providence who died. He was walking across the country barefoot to acknowledge climate change. It was in 2011, I think, or maybe a couple years ago. And now you see, climate change is a national issue, and this guy was killed in Florida. So it's for the poet Mark Balmer, poet Walker, killed in action. Climate is unjust in Florida, where the road winds until it snows. The bus halts in your shadow, barefoot, terra firma. Yellow line is softest, clear stripe of grace between road wreck and breakdown lane. You, Mark, walked twice, circumambulated this country that didn't want you. Your message won't die yet, won't go away, despite your shadow, which haunts us. And I didn't read the title poem, so you have to buy the book.
Well, I was going to thank Oscar for Mr. Fox for bringing me in as the new managing editor. Part of these news that today's the first day I'm meeting our next author, Martin Edmunds. But having read his book, Black Ops, several months ago, it reminded me that really good books of poetry catch you with lines that you feel could only have been written after the poet spent a considerable amount of time spying on your life. So you know what I mean. This book is filled with such lines. One that caught me, I think, first and hardest was a small couplet that said, "She wants a bed off the floor, and I want more." Martin's lines hold a history in them, and he shows us that great poetry speaks our secrets to us. So I want to thank him for doing that, and for all of you for coming here to hear some of your secrets spoken. Martin Edmunds' book, The High Road to Taos, was chosen by Donald Hall for the National Poetry Series. His work has appeared in The New Yorker, A Public Space, The Paris Review, Little Star, Graham Street, The Nation, The Partisan Review, Southwest Review, and Agni, among other journals and anthologies. 3 poems are featured on the Yates Society of New York website. Awards and honors include an Artist Fellowship in Poetry from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, the Discovery/the National Prize, the Lloyd McKim Garrison Medal for Poetry, and the Harvard Monthly Prize. Edmunds was an artist in residence at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine for many years, where he wrote plays, verse plays, libretti, and entertainments. He has also co-written screenplays, including Passion in the Desert, a feature adaptation of the Balzac story for Roland Films released by Fine Line. Edmunds works as a freelance editor, teaches creative writing and versification, and digs life on the Outer Cape as a landscaper, clam raker, and oysterer. Please join me in welcoming Martin Edmunds.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks to everyone for coming out. Great to see familiar faces and new friends. Nasco, it's a joy to have. I'm so proud to be part of this cohort. It's a great group carrying on what Arrowsmith is doing, and thanks to the Grolier for sponsoring us as well. I may read from this because it's easier for me to see you while I'm reading. but I promise you that these poems are actually in the book. Listening to Romeo and Mitch and Thomas read their poems, and you'll hear Thomas in a few minutes, I learn again what it means to have something or someone by heart. This is the climb. And there's the epigraphs from Kazantzakis' report to Greco. Arrived, he asked in surprise. What does that mean? I know, it means now we are leaving. Don't say it's inevitable. Nothing's inevitable, except the heat of this thirsty siesta you'll never escape. Rust flaking from a lacework balcony rail to the throb of a diesel tender crossing the harbor, her face on the pillow, eyes closed, almost asleep. While your heart keeps pumping it out and taking it in, the cupid's bow of her lip caked white with dust from the dry clay roads, the resinous fresh cut smell of pine rising, and gasoline spilled to the ditches in. But the city itself is immaterial, since noon's amnesia will sweep the approaches clean. Call it thieves for convenience, let the blind speak, the blade wait on its sheath of immaculate straw. The sun-swept steps to the scaffold stay hot under your bare feet. Nikos, why not lift a hand to prevent this? You've been down all the roads. Spain, Sicily, Greece. They lead to a single place, a broad plaza whose salt cobbles blaze. The chorus is bored, but the face of the man on the dais matches the bills that prop him in place. If the speaker drags up the dead, the sun will not pause in its crossing. No one object, least of all these familiar faces whose silence will say, your heartbeat is treason. She lies asleep on the bed. So where is the hope that daybreak promised, lost or misplaced? It takes up less space than a seed or pinch of dirt in a pant cuff, and the faith that if it dies in the sun, it will fatten like grass in the rain. Wake up! You must have been dreaming, Nikos. They've metered the rain. Nothing is green here except the fatigues of the leader towering over the podium. Behind him, his generals dressed in the same khaki as the toads. The police are conducting a door-to-door search. There's nothing they can take from you. There's nothing you own. But they envy the poverty your love gives you, Nikos. The black sun of the loudspeaker's bellmouth has called your name. The plaza contracts with the last of its shadows to a raw box whose nail heads dressed with crosses scald. The four corners of the world touch the edge of this coffin. Quick! Knock wood, Nikos! Run! Last night in the taverna, unseen for how many years, waggling his chin in a way inherited from his grandfather, looking up, biting his thread. Nikos! And was it really Stavros removing his glasses, wiping the tears from the frame, letting the cloth fall, getting to his feet, but gingerly setting thimble and needle and thread on a plate to embrace you, then spreading his hands in a gesture that took everything in. Stavros, shaking his head. Why did you come back, Nikos? To bury the dead? How can you tell him they never stay buried for good? And how light they travel. Wherever you go, you find your dead awaiting your arrival. 30 centuries haunted by Helen's face. All the old battles still being fought, living out of a suitcase. That was last night. In this room, this cube of light, your answer, Nikos, echoes. Now as she turns on her side, wavelets break over her nape. You want her so bad you can taste the salt sheen on her skin just by looking. Christ, who the conqueror? Who the sacrifice? Minerva swerves homeward from Rome. Her bright curls pour over the stony coastline at Aulis. And this next poem is Can't Anyone Untie Us. The title is taken from one of Goya's Los Caprichos. No hay quien nos desate. Stars and spurs in Spain, and she wants a bed off the floor. I want more. High tablelands of wheat, days as gold as grain. Iruña, San Fermin, bowling our way south through the feral heat. More raw dawns, her mouth that rained on roof tile bread. More sunlight scythed and veiled and scratchy stacked in the shed. More thirst, more tempest, more hunger that multiplies the risen lobes of the roadstones by the vanishing points of her eyes. The heart's devastations over an empty chair, worse than the breaking of nations. The torch nailed up by its hair to the acid light that scours the threshing floor of the mine, and Goya's black hours where he caught my kind. More brushwork that turns with the swirl of a muleta between the nights when the rats are here, nibbling the foam mattress like cheese, and Everclear keeping the lamps lit with a cool blue flame. What's wrong with the bed on the floor? I write your name in salt and ox blood on the door. This next poem was written in Petra when I was working on the film. We were staying in Wadi Musa and then into the Navatain city of Petra. And Bedouin shepherds, when we first arrived, were returning from their summer grazeland to their homes among the ruins in the excavated caves. They had very few possessions and chose to live in the here and now in a place saturated with the sense that the sandstone facades were turning back into grains of time you had to walk over, treading your way through the narrow seas to get to the citadel that lies open to the stars, facing origins and wind scoured, silent only when the wind died, something elemental. This poem is my thanks offering to the spirit of the place, and it's spoken in the voice of the place.
I need some water.
Petra.
Thank you so much.
My laughter is the crackle of kindling at midnight, the moon, my white goat caught on a thorn. You are a man on his knees, peeking through a keyhole when the door is open. Heaven is my tent roof, hung by a rope from the sky. Sleep with me. I am sweet tea. I am these red seeds on a white plate. Don't let your heart be a bird that starves with food in its cage. This is Winterreise, Winter Journey. It's a title of Schubert's song cycle, setting poems by Wilhelm Miller. Earlier, he had composed a cycle for the group of poems he made at the mill. Schubert completed Winterreise the year before he died at 31. Winterreise. As the body ages, does your spirit grow younger? My spirit cries and rages. Satisfaction? Too little too late. Kissing the maid at the mill, enough, never enough. I want what feeds the hunger. To be sated is to suck tart green gauges. Going, going, gone. All my pretty ones. Songs of love and hate, or songs of love and loss? Shall we play Schubert or Leonard Cohen? Airbnb the Schloss, or crash outside the gate? What do you want from me? Tonight should I be Macheath or Macduff? Shall I lick the blade or weep into my cuff? My spirit cries and rages. The body loves its cages. The spirit likes sleeping rough. One more, this is a longish one. Boca Negra, Black Mountain. Boca Negra is a canyon and petroglyph national monument in Albuquerque, facing west across the mesa to 5 volcanic cones. The canyon surmounted by a 17-mile escarpment strewn with basalt boulders that broke away from the lava flows. And on those boulders, 25,000 petroglyphs, the oldest of which date back 3,000 years or more. On one visit, see, my daughter's here, and I don't know if she remembers this from walking through the place, but there was, on a bend in the path, we encountered someone's voodoo. And 500 years vanished in a blink. It was straight out of Cabeza de Vaca from that journey. Black magic potent enough to render copious ink for this poem. Boca Negra. Little lizard with your eyes sewn open and your lips stitched tight. Was it the sun you struck with your tongue and swallowed, or was it the night? Your putty sack gut slung down like a truncheon of blackjack, a sock weighted with pesos to whack the heads off Jimson or bribe the border guard. The ignition coil of your tail twitched and you moved like a lit fuse through these hills the slow explosions ripped apart. Sun arrow, earth dart, your work was murder, enforcing a no-fly zone. Deep cover black ops master sergeant, unseen, all-seeing from your stakeout in the schist, under the chips of obsidian, above the pumice, your eye petrified, a drop of fossil water from the Pleistocene. Dead, you commune with these mortal enemies. It is the flies who tithe your measly feast. O Boca Negra, O my black-tongued bell-mouth soldered shut, once your wedge head cut a neat cuneiform you had to erase with your tail. Live wire, whipstock swipple, lash of the sandstorm. Quicksilver digit, oh my morning star, your little mimic hands have traveled far to end up where the hours are sanded down, where the blood pulse trips the sun's hooves over the rooftop of these cratered acres, and nothing moves. Little lizard with your eyes sewn open and your lips stitched tight, who staked you to your shadow on the sand? What carbon visions dripped to your brain pan as your pupils widened and the light shuddered out? Gorge on your silence, lizard. Be bitter, but be quick about it, since you can't complain. Still with me, lizard? Look, someone scratched the basalt's desert varnish, lined the markings, a map of their passing and yours, an open palm, a spiral, a star. Someone gouged a shallow basin carved to catch the rain that never comes or came too late for you. Your death stains what it touches a pre-Cambrian ochre sunset glow. And now that smudge is on the corn. The mothers gather. The black mouth calls you home. Listen, cicada, flute of the ruins. Shake the beetle's rattled carapace and watch how the clouds come. Oh, little pinstripe lizard, slit from groin to chin, gutted, stuffed with leaves to keep the magic in. Did no one teach you shun the sparse snake bush, its green too lush for you? Did no one ever say, that empty sky is the sign of plenty, this is the bowl of the skull, these are the hands that hold the eye of the thistle open and close the doors of the rain? Listen, lizard. There was a woman who appeared when I was dead inside. Her tribe climbed the star-studded cedar ladder of the sky. Her hair fanned out against the pillow like the night. Her hands cupped water falling through my dreams of dry riverbed and winter kill. Two of a kind. You and I, lizard. We left our skins there. Little lizard, liquid sibyl, sip the bitter quill of forgiveness. Bathe with me in this abysmal water, lava, font of the dawn. Little lizard with your eyes sewn open and your lips stitched tight. Quick, before they drop us down some chimney into hell. What did you see? What did you say? What did you threaten to tell?
Thank you for the wonderful poems we've heard so far, Martin. Even the usually prosaic pattern between the poems and poetry. Beautifully done. Our final reader this afternoon is, I think, one of the most original and important and innovative artists of this generation. Thomas Sayers Ellis, poet, photographer, I think the Book of Photographs is in the works, professor, band leader, is the author of The Maverick Room and Skinning. He's awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship in Poetry. He also co-founded the Dark Room Collective in what year, Thomas? 88. I don't know how many of you know the history of the Dark Room, but it was a place where writers of color could assemble and read to each other at a time in Cambridge when that simply was not happening. The literary scene in this city was transformed by the Dark Room and their work, their courage, their vision really changed us all. The thing about Thomas is that that was just one step along his way. And he has one of the most interesting and original ears of any poet I know. The music he makes is unlike anyone else's, and he makes music. He has he is now he's the co-founder of what someone this morning called Hegel. And I said, what? Philosophy? It's Heroes Are Gang Leaders, a jazz ensemble. The saxophonist for that ensemble, James Brandon Lewis, is with us today. He's one of the country's leading saxophone players. We're honored to have him here with us. The thing I'd say, and Hegel won this year's American Book Award for oral poetry. Yeah. I think the third book I've done with Thomas. Each has shown another side of the man and the artist. The first was actually an anthology called On the Verge, which Thomas co-edited with poet Joseph Lease. It featured the work of such young poets no longer on the verge, like Tracy K. Smith, the current poet laureate, Kevin Young, the current poetry editor of The New Yorker, John Keane, this year's MacArthur winner, Natasha Trethway, Pulitzer Prize-winning poet. And working on that book with Thomas suggested the generosity of spirit that he brought to every task before him. In The Maverick Room, we got a sense of where he came from. It includes the widely anthologized poem Styx, which tells you something about the rhythms of his early life. In Maverick, in Skin Ink, I think Thomas was one of the first poets of his generation to really identify the body as the locus of being, and something that maybe should have been obvious but was not. This new poem goes in such a different direction I can't begin to describe it, so I'd much rather have you hear it and you find the words for it. Not one of his books has ever repeated any of its earlier maneuvers. And that level of engagement and commitment comes from a rare place. Thomas Sayers Ellis.
Oscar once told me that the good editor, the writer, is the person who talks about, mentions what's not being talked about in the room. So it takes a great craft to introduce me. You have to do quite a bit of editing. But this is not the place for that. And it's good to hear the verse, the units of the earlier poets. Derek Walcott gave a reading at the Dark Room Collective in '89. We walked into our living room. He's the feature. The opening writer was Martina's father. Walk out, Martina read, podium. Dirk came in, moved the podium, put up a chair and sat down, and didn't even speak to us. He read the entire schooner flight, and we just left. I always wanted to do that. I love you, but I'm at a place in my life where corny toys. Always grateful to have you listeners. A play family of little people with Macs and Mega Blocks. Curved learners play pen safe like the pen piles of PayPal. Blackish, smartest products that easily break into Cain ableism cave think, drenched in the seedy bloodlines of a complete captivity, crisis sonatists with composed deliveries, criers who like to play correctness lyrically and tragically, especially publicly, and that an orgasm across their breasts would scare them as if prude frogs, or like the followers or cravers of the radius of restraint, male, female, feminine male, masculine female, the sunburst surrounding the head of their beloved Jesus, like Google is the sinister sin and snitch engineer of all their play datish, changing, insane, sane appearances. The cohesive chorus of a wicked fraternal order, a canon club, unlike Princeton's canon club for anagrammers who self-tilted over pinball glass, eat out the assonance of anime like tiny types in cozy coops, nerf verse, legal woke apnea. Some nights in the capstone event of occult queerness, their longest and favorite joystick pivots like a cockpit input, courtesy of Nick Kopernik's Saturnalian salary cap, before splattering into a scandalous form of sky fence scansion, an ugly masturbate and baton of fraud arts. But by morning comes a counter-renaissance of switched launch codes, paper airplanes in a box, laid out on a parallel of necklace crucifixions, awaiting Super Mario's Big Six Masonic footwork, brick twerk, an informant's red shield of blood, the chronic cruise control cockets from publisher to pub that proves the asylum is a reverse playground of easy-baked licks and drinks, a menace back full of the chocolate factory of anal tongues, prose dipped in verse journalism, big and yellow, and its hepatitis C is Pikachu, almost thrown from the SUV window of bird fear, rock devotion, crafted in malaise of intersex, Nutra, and two-spirit, the entire theme park, an erotic, noir, Disney, fluid, Egypt, Eden, tech. May have tied the knot alone, but Jiminy C pulled Tinker B from the King Boy's butt, Goofy's doggy smile, Nefertiti's wet time wrinkled titties, Pharaoh's false beard, the public scent of waking beauty on budget, in line for walks, week-ending Duende Empire, underage beds. Cleo, PC Patra, had two Donalds, Roman and German, both within all 7 Nile basket drawers and drawers, grouped imagining the afterlife of Giovanni's execution. Loads of little books loaded in a confiscated cubicle at the center of Time's Templar templates, soldiertude, nearly low, nearly lowly, nearly low, nearly lonely knee-high seekers, the enameled scraped narrative, the skin becoming metal, a gonzo, graveyard, Georgix, so citizen, it rings like a bill of letters of burning Nortons, blank seeds, programmed on a papyrus of pathos, goat seeds by a male mariner who first named partially Cobb's and ear, shanked in a web of wax minions like Brutus, imagining Brutus, making messiahs of his own A-list nation state, the Lizard Kings, the whole text being one of disguise-aside. Black man, if you live with a black woman, a Moorish member lover, don't wait for the black male blame of Manchurian whiteness to occupy the same single payer tray of black assness. Iago, the Othello, wrongly extracted from Demona's moan of demons. Black man, that's not black writing, and protected by an educated company of dogs. Paraphrase, memories of king killing, parachute strapped, or like an elperner in a curly, so glowless bald afro, bald afro, earth afro, like a Cornel East in solemnly swear, from Pompeii to pomade, the atrocious innocence of clothes, and not a single outlet for a hot comb in the catacombs. And yet the raw darks of Moors, arts, vandalism. Yes, and no land grabbed the wrong Lord's race mansion. Then pick up sticks for an etch-a-sketch of wicked theologians, serving the diminutive dualism of proofread improvement, proving nothing, the nothing provers, visiting the seat silence at the back of the syllabus, where it's very difficult to march in a straight line on a gray polystyrene screen with white knobs, Comic-Con verse. Flame lace red sneakers, string theory on both sides of the aluminum powder window, rolling vertically and horizontally and dissolving on a peer-reviewed platform bed, separated by plasticity of constant anniversary, barking, crude, net, cotton mutts, addicted to the devil-found blue evidence of Sonny's premature ticket prices. If fingernails, nursed in permanent, nothing personal, reading pretense, could talk. Yo, awkward chuckle society of one. Yo, what organization does truth belong to? A broke down, peculiar one, or an X-rated, immature, drop box non-profit, multimedia in the uniform of another discarded discipline of manic woe, too tight for fellatio, cornea, eat me. Like a tub of Tahoe beneath ski lifts, you suck like the real sucking it takes to keep lifting your fake May sun above the corona cusp of creepypasta space orphans and mixed water bubbles, the hubby scope ho-ho-hos of thought po-po, tanked by the content of thin blackness, studying whiteness, from the sin men sin dimension of melaninated exclamation, the soul deficiency and compromise, raw sunlights, self-blocked in career rub, use the frequencies of borrowed autobiographical soap to satisfy Miss Pac-Man's golden intestinal appetite, her pellet bowls of operator Twitter fish. You can freak sorry for and label and libel the toxic literature of care culture. But no matter how well my witness in jams, art referencing arcade witness, or how in demand the bloated rise and erection of elegiac monuments, I won't appear in another group photograph in an obelisk of stairs. That sounds reference to, but it's actually meant to kill reference. We're forced to dream in separate sleeper cells. Matter and mother, like physicality and spirituality, are one and the same, separated superconductors of equal infinity. Pews and long stones divinely deferred in one of those rice-backed bumper rooms of zero harmonic resonance, known for its giant egg surprise production cycle, attended by cookie swirl C-level preschoolers, carbon copy failures in search of Renderman's low-definition version of Tavistock engineered emancipation, colorized, colonized, like the penicillin lives of all school supplies, a middle passage midsummer past intelligent manhunt, green lit in a green night, by runaways, cast off page, memberless, near a new lane, info lane, island of retina lead work, and unboxed late burst, the amateur now goal of sharing the two in clips, to implant incredulous mean reefs, Clark and Cassiano, Origons and Incredibles, as late for inflection, lunar launch, and solar real vulgarity is higher self-Latin, each a comedic charlatan, pelting the neo-Ovid's nuts with the throwing threats of Cyrillic missionary work, sun disk, sacred heart, sweet chop-chop in the cis-lunar cold morning, for the hip-hop infants, backpacks, kindergarten, Je vois la farouchisme, two watches, two two-timing, two-faces, reminders to paper watchers, the dual yin-yang workshopings of toy time loyalty, both wrists of their most luminous body. The towering host capstone they proudly upon, a faux Polaris, muscular head, musically drawn, pearly, and falling from the arse of melon carnage, Arsenal's tote bag Pegasus. Positioned with extraordinary precision in staged pagan blackness. 1 inch in height, 1 inch in width, grocery based in plastic with a cute face, all for reading, readership, soak sunk in brain rinse in the digestive tract of misapplied myth milk. Vimeo, Venmo, Vimana. Ask about old St. Jules Jones, and they always mention their savior, the Redemptorist and Father General Meadows, a bloom, bloom, bloom in Death Valley, legionnaire cloaked in swine with a nose spoon and the shock. Exchanges with the Dean of Devils, pocket recorded for one world wordsmiths. But oh, we're not supposed to eat tree. And oh, no sloppy slow womb entering or womb leaving, birth joy sex. A liquor rice sticky feeding on uterine lining, the secret spirit and sperm aging into a sun. Regulated to the pornography of poverty's circle of sight, followed by several lectures by the blames on the inappropriate use of tension and metaphors forbidden to touch. Craft psychology has nothing to do with talent. Let me repeat myself. Craft psychology has nothing to do with talent or the emotional attendance split by the non-sovereign chores and clergy coursework, and a Nicaea legitimacy in the kitchen age of online persona management. Purpose of foundation, another key to heaven disguise. Safe haven, thy healthy hell of healing. Kahum la baya jai, all gaily gathered in a gate-kept gallery like a massive moat more friendly than molten near the robot sex angelic round of venom, in the grand urban style of NYU urban grandeur. The door opened widest to the demon, a musical lamb baby mat, the original playing in the dark with others, evolution plush, theory bouncing spherical attraction on fleek, flat ass, fat tube, gluten G-string, PhD, the valedictorian of Velcros, viral secret. A monastery was a safe place to do the nasty. Despite the peculiar betrayal of big broadsides and cosmetic changes, so awful and moody, bowed elves, skin ugly as any deactivated action figure, get mama saying, a goddess, firm in a divine misery of cockle sacred tunnel geometry, an injured service to man-child emergency decision-making, elite, enlightened, eternally lit, an eternal flame in broken waters full of navels, vectors, chevrons, and veterans, seasoned symbols under treehouse arrest. No Emmy for the role of orthophoto, only fig fibbing, Fibonacci figure eating in the C-section of section C. Some light-headedness, some head before the high-mounted escape, lap, throne, seat, a meal, face down in a breastplate. So much leftover healing, it gives bad head a bad headache. Tired as a torpedo masseuse with a detonating eye roll and a rural surname. The most transparent, double agenda ever for baby mama flight. Just one of numerous twisted grant applications, child support less surfers, and the saddle of live, ib, do power to Esla limp in a delivery sled, monthly, misled by the print of agent editors, celeb, literary coon-ups, cans and cants, who say they have nothing to hate, nothing of pertinent permanence beyond the just stacked photocopies of a paper past, same punk founder folk, the artifice all-stars, full of lackadaisical truce law, of blueprint surrender, like a cultural staff chip infection, far for fame the exhorter, the souls through salesperson, the souls ran through, the souls ran through salesperson, for a very visible debut next to an ad for wishy-washy knockoffs, carbon copy review. Hey, thanks.
Please stay now for a book signing. The writers will be happy to sign your books. Please pick them up right here. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks again to Johnny and Francine and the Grolier. Thanks to the Meeting House. Thanks for coming.